All right, let's check out this first user's code. Again, remember, we're going to be just looking at the code and not necessarily focusing on the user experience or the user interface. So usually when I start out, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at some tests. I didn't say necessarily add any tests, but it looks like they have some tests. Looking at these example tests, that's a typical example test, useless. They have some auth tests here, but this looks like the tests that are probably generated automatically, so I'm not too worried about that. It looks like there's nothing in here actually. Profile test, yeah, that's automatically generated from something like Breeze as well. So, all right, let's go and take a quick look at our env.example, make sure there's nothing strange in there. Make sure my stuff is all set up normally fine locally as well. Okay, let's go in here. App issue. So this is a Laravel 11 project, so this is much smaller scope down, so that's nice. I'm going to look inside of my controllers and, oh, okay. So I have my dog controller, my profile controller, auth stuff, a lot of auth stuff in here. So my assumption is that they probably scaffolded the stuff in, but I would definitely make sure not to leave the stuff in unless you have verified that you're using it and you have tests and stuff like that. So maybe the authentication endpoint is good, but the rest of these, if it's not part of the project, I think they should be deleted. You can always add them back in, especially when you're using Git, but this basically allows us much more of a platform for things that go wrong or for people to have bugs or any kind of stuff. We don't want those around. All right, make sure there's nothing in the controller that's been modified. Nope. Profile controller. This looks a lot like the built-in stuff too, and there's no profile edit. Let's say resources. Yeah. Okay. So this is again copied over stuff. This would be a really big ding in a project that I was working on, code that doesn't work. So let's go to our dogs controller. All right. So very first thing, it looks like index, create, store, show, edit, update, and destroy. All right, so this is a normal resourceful controller. Let's look at our routes file here, web. Dogs, and they made a resourceful controller too. It looks like they have other stuff in here as well. So a good portion of this stuff looks like it's from that seeded in stuff, so this is something that they shouldn't have in there. But this is also interesting as well because they have a route up here, but then they have this down here as well. So this is probably not understanding how this works. So let's just go back in here. So dog, auth, user, get the dogs. It looks like maybe there was a misunderstanding. You know, maybe cross user, like should this user belong to dogs or is it just dogs in general? So maybe when I said cross user, that didn't make a lot of sense to that person, and that's fine. So let's take a look at our user. Do they have dogs? Well, they do have dogs on them. And then the dog, it has a user. So it should be related. Let's look at our migrations. Users table, cache jobs, dogs table. Yeah, so I don't understand. So what I think they did is they did this instead of getting all the dogs. So this is bad. We don't do this. Also, I would suggest not using compact. That was a big thing that was really common a lot, but in the Laravel world, but it just makes it harder to understand, especially if you don't have a good editor, that the word dogs is actually lined up with this variable. So let's just say we didn't have any of these here. Yeah, my editor tells me there's a problem here, but if you don't have an editor, you won't know you won't know what that really means. Oops. All right, so I think there's a problem here. Let's look at this. It's an index file, which has all of the thing in here. So they're not doing any layout. I didn't say to really work on or worry about the layouts either, but so we're just looking at back-end code here, but it looks a little rough. So we got our view for creating a dog, store. Generally, I like to see validation done in a form request, but this is fine too. Required string max 255. That's good because those hit the database size. Birth year. Oh, that's good. Minimum and maximum, so they can't be any older than this year. That's smart. I didn't specify that, but that's a good thought. And if it's validated, get the users, get the dogs, and create one. So yeah, this really should have been this. I think that's what the user wanted, or the author wanted. All right. Anyway, so we're looking at here, they're creating show. Well, we didn't talk about show, so there's nothing in here. What I would do is I would not have this in here, and then I would go back here and you can say except show, so that it's not looking for that show method ever either. All right, let's go back to here, edit, string. So generally we want to do route model binding. So the string ID we have to find, if this was just a dog, so if we did dog, it would automatically bind it in there and we wouldn't have to do that sort of thing. So we don't want to do that as well. So this looks like a junior Laravel programmer that doesn't necessarily understand how the bindings work. Update, again, good updates here. Get the dog, we would have passed that in. Update them, since these are all fillable, that works. Generally, when we get our validate, we can get our validated information as well. I don't really want people to use input ever. If anything, use like safe or what would it be? Does this return the validated? Yeah, I think. So you're gonna do something like that. And I mean, there are other ways to do that in Laravel as well, but the point is I want you to see that we get our validated data and that's what we use. We don't necessarily go to the input. True, it has been validated, but like what's to say that someone who doesn't understand this doesn't say like color request, input color, and then at some point we forget to do validation and something bad happens. So we always want to use our whitelisted validated information when possible. And then our destroy, delete, etc. just comes in here. So the big thing I'm seeing here is there's no authorization on who can delete what. So if a user logged in, they're not restricting this stuff by that user, and there's no policy stuff in here as well. So I didn't necessarily say that, but this is interesting if you think about it. Based off those requirements that I gave, this is what was coded. And there's a bunch of security holes in that, so it's not a great thing. Let's just look at, see if there's anything else we need to look at here real quick. User, again, fillable. Probably wouldn't want to do this because we would be doing it off of the user relationship. In general, we want to have properties above as well, and don't have use factory in there. If you don't have a factory, it doesn't look like they have a factory. They seed in any users, so they did create my test user for me, so that was nice.